Greetings, everybody. Hope you and family are well. My name is Sanjiv Venkatram, and welcome to another edition of User Delight with Microsoft Technology. In this episode, we'll actually do something special and look at improving our personal health with Microsoft Technology. So, the title for today's talk is Stakeholders of Our Health, being us and our loved ones. And then we're basically going to talk about four things. One is the insights from a few specialist physicians on good health practices. Two, the equipment, the reports, the metrics that we use to manage our health. Three, very deeply thankful to Microsoft for their platforms that have helped me input and manage and understand health data effectively. And finally, I'll talk about the diet that I actually have and the exercise regime that I go through. Okay, so let's head on over to look at the physicians. So the first gentleman that I looked at, and I'm very fortunate to have come across him, it was through a family physician, is Dr. Rob Lustig. He is basically an emeritus professor of pediatrics in the Department of Endocrinology at University of California, San Diego, San Francisco, I believe. And he talks about guidance on metabolic health and interpreting metrics such as lipid panel and to improve our metabolic health, right? His key message is sugar is a killer, and then we need to have good wholesome diet with real food, and then watch insulin levels as measured by fasting insulin. In fact, if I were to go over to YouTube, here's an excellent video that actually talks about understanding our cholesterol panel or lipid panel and improving our metabolic health, beginning the journey towards improving our metabolic health. He also has a book out called Metabolical, which talks in detail about the topic. So coming back, if we head on over to Dr. Mark Hyman, he has his own institute on functional medicine and basically talks about guidance on impact of lifestyle and environment on our genes and our health. His message as well is sugar's the killer, and he talks about whole and real food and then growing younger through lifestyle changes. Then his talk here, this is something that I found very useful. He has a 10-day detox. Now, leaving the detox aside, for me, it was actually about the diet that he talks about that I internalized, right? Then we have Dr. Pradeep Jamnadas. He's actually a cardiovascular surgeon, and he's a founder and medical director of Cardiovascular Interventions. Now, his guidance is on the link between diet, aging, and disease. It's a consistent theme across Dr. Rob Lustig and Dr. Mark Hyman and him. And he talks about, again, sugar is a killer and fasting as a means to good health, right? I started doing fasting listening to him. Then he also talks about diet being key to preventing cardiovascular disease and the importance if you're an Indian American or generally have Indian origin, ghee as an important element of your diet. We'll talk more about it later, right? Then finally, we've got Dr. David Sinclair. He's basically a professor. He's not exactly a physician, but he's a professor of genetics at the Harvard Medical School. And his guidance is on why we age and how to slow the effects of aging. And he talks about diet being key to prevent accelerated aging. Nutrition can actually reverse aging and understand the biology of aging. And in addition to Dr. Sinclair, we also have Dr. David Perlmutter. He basically talks about uric acid, which can cause weight gain, diabetes, heart disease, and over a longer term dementia. This is yet another outstanding video that I actually recommend we go through. Okay, so we have now covered off the first point here, getting the insights from a few physicians, and as you can see, they stress the importance of staying away from sugar and then eating real and whole food and also about the frequency of food and fasting, right? Now let us actually look at the monitors and reports later, but the monitors that I actually use to and the metrics, if you will. That's the most important thing, the metrics and then the monitors. So let us look at those, right? So in terms of metrics, and this information basically comes off of the physicians. The first one is fasting insulin, not sugar, but fasting insulin. And per Dr. Lustig, this needs to be below 8, as higher values can actually indicate insulin resistance. Now, as we eat poor food and often through the day, insulin spikes and never actually goes down. And then over a period of time, this leads to insulin resistance. And if you were to take a reading of fasting insulin, that could be indicative of what's going on in the body. A number below 8 is what he actually recommends, Dr. Lustig. Then we have alanine aminotransferase. This needs to be below 25. Again, indicates high values, indicate fatty liver. If you were to take a report, Dr. Lustig says that the typical range is up to 40, but then he goes back to the 70s and says that during the 70s, this reading used to be 25, and that's the number that we should hang our hats on. It depends on the race again. It's a great video actually to listen to, Dr. Lustig's, where he talks about depending on the race, it's either 20 or 25 is a good number to be at, right? Below that is excellent. Now, the third one is triglycerides, and this value needs to be below 150. Higher values can manifest themselves as dense molecules in your LDL, leading to a higher LDL, and then that goes into the bloodstream and you can lead to diabetes, and then finally deposit of calcium in the heart, and then heart disease, and so on and so forth, right? Then we look at HDL, which is good cholesterol. Good diet and exercise primarily is the one that actually drives your HDL up, in addition to genetic factors. And the idea here is that that needs to be high. So the ratio of the triglycerides to HDL needs to be below 1.5 is what Dr. Lustig recommends, right? Then we have uric acid. As we saw it from Dr. David, it causes many things. One among it is actually insulin resistance, and this number needs to be below 5. Belly to waist ratio is a physical, very easy determining factor of liver fat, should be around 0.8. And then I look at diastolic BP. Anywhere between 75 and 80 is good. 80 to 85 is hypertension, and over 85 is hypertension too, right? Very important to monitor. Then of course the derivative of all this is weight, and if all these factors are fairly okay, your weight is going to be absolutely fine, right? So with this, let us look at the monitors. So I look at a combo monitor here. It gives me my BP and the ECG. In fact, I actually have on my phone an app that connects to this. This is an Omron app. So let me just bring up my phone here really quickly and show you this, because I just took a reading this evening. And if I were to go over to my phone, there it is, right? If I go scroll down here, oops, I think I went to the next page. You will actually see my BP was 118 over 69. This was literally an hour ago. And then it indicates my heart rate as well as my ECG. And the ECG, I could actually email this to myself if I were to click on this here, send my email. I could select one, this one, and send it over, and it actually comes over to my email. If I go over to my email, you will actually see it has actually come through here. I just did this evening, right? So with this, we'll talk about the reports later. So with this, let us actually head on over. I'm gonna get back to my app here. I'm gonna leave my phone down. And so I have built this app on what is called as Microsoft Power Platform. And Power Platform has got 3 components. One, it allows you to easily, you don't have to be an IT god, for normal human beings to go create apps of your idea, your terms, in a time frame of your choosing. Then it's got a component to do automation, which is moving data from place A to place B and notifications and so on and so forth. That's called Power Automate. And the third one is basically trends of your data, so on and so forth, to get some intelligence out of your health data. So that's called Power BI, right? And there are other things in Microsoft that add on to this, a service called as Azure that has got other aspects of AI. Open AI, as an example, you might have actually heard of Open AI and ChatGPT, so there's that service. And there is another service to, again, move data called Functions. Okay, so we'll go over that shortly. So the first one here in this is basically entering data from the machine. So I'm just going to say enter info. And then if I click on, new here, this goes away, opens up the form. I just literally entered this data, so I'll just walk you through this. So it's got my name, it's like literally got my, the date, when did I take this reading, what the systolic and diastolic number was, what the heart rate was, what the weight was, and I'm 6'2" and 160 pounds, so fairly light. And then the waist to belly ratio, I actually monitor the temperature for my dad, and then I can actually go in and literally upload an attachment. As an example, if I were to click this eye looking thing here, this goes away and literally shows my ECG. And this is the ECG that actually comes through to my phone, and I actually upload it. If I literally were to do this again, if I say new, and I'm not going to enter these values here, but if I were to attach a file here, I go to my downloads, and then I've downloaded this from my email. If I open this and then go click on the eye here, it shows me my ECG, right? So how does this actually do this? Basically, there is a PDF reader inside Power Apps, and then that reader literally looks at the first item that has actually been attached in my Power Apps attachment, and then shows you the ECG. So it comes in very handy if you were to actually be talking to your physician, right? So you don't have to struggle, the data is right in front of them. So once this data has actually been recorded, Power Automate then takes over and actually refreshes my Power BI. So if I were to go over to the flow here, this is Power Automate. So I'm clicking a button in Power Apps, it goes away, refreshes the data set, and then basically sends an email. So if I head back here, I'm going to close this BI. This was from before. So if I were to refresh BI here, the flow is going to run now, and literally in about 10-15 seconds, you're going to actually see Power BI pop up, and then we'll show you, there it is. This is Power BI with what is called as Microsoft Fabric, and it goes away and literally shows you my BI readings. Now, early on in January is when my readings were in the 90s, the diastolic readings, and that literally freaked me out. And my weight too was actually about 204 pounds. So I was, I'm 6'2", not too shabby, but fairly on the higher side. And I started walking post that. And somewhere around end of February, around March, my weight had gone down to about 86, 87, and my BP had gone down to about 85. And then progressively, it's actually like, ever since I started doing my diet according to the metrics and so on and so forth from the physicians, my BP went really down. It's like it stays between 70 and 75 right now, which is ideal, is where I want it to be. Okay, so this is Power BI, is where I have my charts, right? And then this is refreshed through Power Automate automatically when I click a button in my Power Apps. Okay, so this is how I actually record the readings from the monitors. All right, if I were to go back here, let us actually go to scan monitors. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually bring up my phone, and then here I've got an app. The component here is I am going to go over and I'm going to literally take a picture. This is a cashew nut here. So assume that I'm at a market. I'm looking at different vegetables that I would like to know more about. And I'm just here simulating with a cashew. So I'm going to basically click on the cashew. I take a picture of the cashew. Then I'm going to go away and literally ask here what, whoops, this literally went away. So I'm going to go back into the app, and there you go, and scan monitor. And then I'm going to basically say initialize this, take a photo, back facing, oops, back facing, right? And there it is, right? So I'm gonna go click on this guy. So take a photo, I'm gonna leave it there, and then I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna basically say, what nut is this? What nutrients does it give us, right? And I am going to send this to ChatGPT or Azure Open AI, which is essentially a co-pilot, right? So I'm going to click on this. This goes away, takes the values to Power Automate, and then Power Automate actually sends it to Azure Open AI or ChatGPT, and then pretty soon you will actually see the result here. This says it's a cashew. They're rich in a variety of nutrients. As an example, vitamin E, vitamin K, so on and so forth, right? Absolutely fantastic information that I could actually save, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you behind the scenes as to what's going on with this. So essentially, when the button in my Power App is clicked, what happens is that I'm going to minimize these things. What happens is that let me go to Power Apps here. So the image that I took and the text that I added, so the image that I took of the cashew and the text that I actually input here gets sent to from the Power Apps to my ChatGPT. So if I click here in Power Apps, you will actually see that there is a text field and then there is actually an image, and these two have been captured and then sent to my ChatGPT. So in ChatGPT, I think I should edit this flow. You might actually understand this a little better if I were to edit the flow here, right? So basically, I'm getting the image and the text or the question. Then I pass it to my HTTP connector that will take me over to OpenAI. I authenticate with OpenAI, and then I pass the image as well as the question. And once the data comes back in a JSON format, I parse the JSON to get the individual components. I put the individual components, I put exactly what I need, which is the content part of the JSON that comes back into a variable. I cycle through it, then I put that entire whatever it's actually cycled through the content into one variable and send it back into Power Apps. If I go back here and literally look at the flow that just ran, you will see that there is my HTTP content. It's gotten this entire body. So I basically parse the body and I break it up into individual components such as the content here. And then when I go down, I apply each. In this case, it just cycles through this one and gives me just that here. See, it has brought in just the content here. And then I pass it to the variable and send it back to my Power Apps. And that's how I'm able to get the result here, and then I just put it in a label and display it to people. Okay, awesome. So if I were to get back here, now you've actually seen, if I were to go back really quickly, you've actually seen the physicians that I follow, the monitors and the metrics that I actually maintain, and partially the Microsoft platform, right? So getting back, so we have seen how we could enter information from equipment, so on, and manually do this. How you could actually scan if you're in a fruit market, whatever vegetable market, to look at these vegetables and what nutrients they actually offer. Now the third component over here is actually being able to scan reports, right? So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to actually perhaps refresh the screen so that whatever here is reset, right? I just done this this evening, so I'm gonna reset this whole thing. It's gonna take a minute or so, and while it's actually refreshing, the one with the scanner, it has come in really handy. I've been able to identify fruit that I didn't know as to what it was. So I held my camera to it and asked what nutrients the fruit had, and there you go, I was able to get it. Okay. So I'm going to go over to the scanner here. I think let me play this, and then I'm going to go to the scanner. And here, the idea is to attach a report. So my parents are down in India, and I keep going there every now and then. And whenever I go there, I go to a diagnostic lab, and I actually get a report, a blood report with all the parameters, right? Part of it is the blood report, then I get the lipid panel, so on and so forth, right? So if I were to attach a report here, I'm going to go over to my drive, and then blood work. I'll select this one, click open, and when I attach this and then say okay, and then click on save and scan, this goes away and shows me my report here, right? It literally shows me my report, and as you can see, I can see my cholesterol, my triglycerides, so on and so forth. And what happens now is that a Power Automate flow takes over, and then it sends it to Azure AI. And in Azure AI, there are many different types of AI. One of it is a document scanner. So what the document scanner does is that it is trained to pick up these values and report it back to me, right? So if I were to go to this flow here, what happens here is when I click a button in Power Apps, it runs what is called as a custom connector. Now this custom connector calls on an Azure function, and what the function actually does is that it picks up this report from where it's stored, and it's actually stored in what is called as a blob store. It is stored here in Azure in a blob store. It just looks like your Windows Explorer essentially. So it picks it up from there, and it actually sends it to Azure to scan the document. So if I go over, so the custom connector and the Azure function basically takes that report from the store and sends it to a document scanner for it to scan everything and get the values over into Power Automate, and from there it comes in as what is called as a JSON format with a whole bunch of information, but we just want the values, so we parse the JSON and send it back to Power Automate. So if I were to go to my function, you will actually see that it is gone. The function goes to my store. It's also called as a blob store, a mouthful. So it goes to the blob store, picks up the document. From there, it actually sends it to the AI model, and the AI model reports on hemoglobin, RBC, and a whole bunch of other metrics that we had talked about earlier, right? So now this has gone away here, and actually, it's got all the metrics down, because of AI. It's brought the metrics in. And if I were to click on information here on anyone, let's say fasting insulin, what this does is that Power Automate then goes away, takes this reading to ChatGPT, and then asks ChatGPT as to what Dr. Lustig has to say about this number. And then as you can see, it basically says that, he's an expert on obesity and metabolic syndrome and the importance of maintaining insulin. And he says that the normal range has to be between 2 and 25. Now he says ideally it should be below 10, and then, around 7 or so, right? So basically I'm at around 8, generally okay. Can it be lower? Absolutely. I think my latest reading was around 7, right? So I'm good to go, okay? So if we were to go back, let's actually head back here. I just want to again jog your memory as to the journey. So we looked at the insights from the physicians and the metrics. We looked at the monitors and the reports, and we have looked at the Microsoft programs, the platforms, and especially Power Apps and Power Automate that actually help us put this all together. Now let us actually go over and look at diet and exercise, right? The last component here. So basically, and let me give you the punchline. So at 7 in the morning, I have a soup essentially of steamed vegetables. So beetroot, great for nitrous oxide and vasodilation. Coyote, carrots, great for eyes. Radish, broccoli, beans, and then that goes into the steamer. And then tomatoes and onions, basically I saute them in a little bit of ghee, which is essentially clarified butter, and with a little bit of mustard seed. And then I put the whole thing in a pan, or in a pan, and then you add everything in, and with a little bit of turmeric, with a pinch of turmeric, not a whole lot. It's not good for you, just a little tiny bit, and then you boil them together to get a soup. On the other hand, I actually have some cream of wheat, a little bit of a porridge. If you're Indian, it's called upma. You know what it is. So I have it with a little bit of like beans, and maybe carrot. And I have this at 7 o'clock, 7:30 in the morning. Then I don't eat anything. Then I have nuts. So I have this literally. So if I go over to my Excel, I have roughly about 20 grams of pistachios, cashews, pecans, almonds, walnuts, hazelnut, one or two Brazil nuts, and some peanuts. So I have that right after I eat this, and then I don't eat anything until about 1 o'clock, right? Literally nothing, just water. So at 1, I typically, if I'm really, if I'm not hungry, I kind of stay away. But if I'm hungry, I actually, which I usually am, I have some fruit. So I have bananas, apples, pears, um, uh, plums, maybe blueberry, and then some strawberries, right? That's what I have in the afternoon. And once I have that, I don't have anything else again until like 6:30, 7 o'clock. I have the same exact soup and cream of wheat at 7, and from there on, I don't eat anything. And then every Friday I fast. I eat in the morning at 7:30, nothing through the day, just water, and the following morning I actually have the same exact soup. It literally has cleaned me up and has made a different person out of me. I literally feel like a 30-year-old right now, but I know my metrics are great, right? So this is a journey that I've been on for the past 4 or 5 months, and my weight has actually remained stable at 160 for about 3 4 months right now, which is absolutely fantastic. I feel really good. Okay, and then here, beetroot gives you, nitric oxide production in the body, and then it is a vasodilator, lowers blood pressure. Then carrots is beta carotene for your eyes. Radish, vitamin C, right? And then, essential synthesis of collagen that supports skin, blood vessels, so on and so forth. Then broccoli again is vitamin C, immune system, skin health. Cauliflower is vitamin K, and so on and so forth. Okay, and the lentils that I actually have, it is, if you're Indian, it is basically dal is what I have, tur dal, and for vegetarians, it's a great source of protein, right? And you can mix this up with different dals and have it. Okay, awesome. So if I were to get back here and all the way back. So we have actually looked at the insights from the physicians. We have looked at monitors, the equipment and the reports and the metrics that I use. We have looked at the Microsoft platform that and by the way, if you want to know more about these platforms, I have snippets of what each of these components actually do in detail, like a real by-step walkthrough in my YouTube videos. So kindly feel free to leverage that. And then the diet component. Now, in terms of exercise, I walk about 10,000 steps every single day. And then I do about roughly 10 to 15 pull-ups a day, and perhaps about 2 sets of 20 push-ups every day. I'm going to be 52 in November, and very thankful, very happy, very fortunate to have these metrics as well as my physical health. Deeply thankful to Dr. Rob Lustig, especially amongst others, for his guidance, as well as to Microsoft Technology for enabling all of this. Thank you very much. Wishing you the very best.